now joined by Capitec Bank CEO Gerrie Fourie. Gerrie, thank you very much for your time this afternoon. It's been a tough operating environment. We've spoken to your peers in the banking sector, and they are saying the same thing. They are seeing a strain in terms of the rental finance, in terms of credit, and they are thinking of pulling back when it comes to the credit and loans that are dished out to the public. But you started doing this much earlier, and it seems the results are paying off.
Yeah, I think you've summed it up. It was a tough, from a credit perspective, it was a tough 6 months, or actually 12 months. We've started pulling back earlier this year, as early as January. And I've reported this morning that we've seen that there's improvements coming in the second quarter of our results. So we're comfortable or confident that I think we've done enough, but we're monitoring it very closely. We sitting weekly on our credit side and evaluating the behavior of the client, the affordability, and where the income is coming from, what sectors, what industries, etc., etc. So we're watching it very closely, and we're agile in it, and we will move if need be. I think the other side of our results is a very strong growth in all our other products. Our transactional side going up 21%, our value-added services up in total, if you combine transactional income and our value-added, up 25%. We've launched Connect, our Capitec Pay, or new products that we brought in. That brought in 395 million rand. So, you know, if you look at it in total, yes, and the stress in the credit side, but the other side of the businesses has done exceptionally well. So we're actually pleased with the results.
Absolutely, and also the percentage of those distressed consumers, that rate is now back to pre-COVID-19 levels. When do you think you might change your strategy when it comes to how you are lending to your clientele?
Well, I think that's a factor of the economy. You know, we've just started seeing in the last 2 months that the inflation rates are coming down. The food inflation is it's down from 10 to 8%. So I think one will actually really can make that decision more, October, November. But I think if you look at all the signs, international economic signs, South African economic signs, from inflation, interest rates, it's looking that next year is going to be a much more stable year, and one will take that in consideration. I think the most important thing is actually we need to get our economy to grow, and that's where we actually need to focus.
When you look at the macroeconomic scenarios, you are using the Bureau for Economic Research when it comes to how the economy is doing, and it is the same as that scenario is the same as the one at the end of February 2023. There is an expectation that the economic conditions are not going to worsen that much, according to your financial results.
Yeah, that's 100%. You know, everyone is expecting inflation to be around about 5%. Then it's going to be interesting to see what interest rates is going to do. It's going to be interesting to see what the Fed does in America. But I personally think if interest rates goes up, it will be another 0.25%. Otherwise, it will be fairly stable for the rest of this year and a big portion of next year. And then hopefully we'll start seeing a reduction. But, you know, if we look at interest rates, it's always good to look at it in perspective. The interest rates as where they are now is where they were pre-COVID. So we are on exactly that same rate. It's not that we're 4 or 5% higher than pre-COVID. I think what is hurting the consumer is more the food inflation and fuel prices. And a concern is the rand dollar, because we're importing quite a lot, and that's got an impact on our goods that we're importing. So one needs to look at those areas to say, when is the economy going to normalize?
And when you look at your peers as well, it's something quite important to note that credit impairments, although they are up, deposits are also up, and that says something about the other side of the consumer who are actually depositing money and who are actually getting some revenues, getting some income from the high interest environment currently.
Yeah, you know, I looked at the BA 900s. Now, we as banks need to submit to the Reserve Bank our lending books, our deposit rates, deposit books, etc., etc. And if you look at that information, if you compare July this year with July last year, deposits are up 130 billion in South Africa. So that shows you there is still money in the economy, because normally if the economy is under strain, people will pull back or use their savings. But interesting, if you look at it, it's a 10% growth, and that shows you the guy on the street, the person, the businesses have got enough cash.
Let's talk about something that I'm sure many Capitec customers will want to hear from you in terms of the glitches from your app. It's something that has been happening time and again. We saw it recently. How impactful has that been to your bottom line, and what are you doing to make sure that it doesn't happen again, just like the past long weekend?
Yeah, I think if you look at, the app is for us very important. I think one needs to understand that the app volumes has grown with 78%. So the app has got 11 million clients, so it's grown tremendously. We were actually quite happy with how stable the app was for the last 6-7 months, and then we had 2 glitches now in August. Which is unacceptable. It hasn't got a direct impact, but it's got a brand impact. There's a full team where we're redesigning the full architect and technical design of the app to make certain that we can handle this volume and volume growth. So there's a big focus for us to make certain that we are stable on the app.
Gerrie, one would have thought that we wouldn't be talking about this today, because you have invested heavily when it comes to your tech. You went out to look for the best tech people out there in order to be considered one of the best in the business. Hasn't that investment paid off? Is there more work to be done? What can you tell those clientele about this not happening again?
Yeah, I think, it's one of those things. Don't like a system to be down, but if you work with our volumes and big client numbers, there will be glitches here and there. We're investing heavily in tech, and as I discussed this morning on our presentation, we're bringing in the latest, newest technology in the next 6 to 8 months. So we're quite comfortable. If I look at the app, we're quite comfortable from November onwards. We should be in a very stable situation, and we're further upgrading and spending a considerable amount of money on the app in the next year to make certain that it performs at the right levels.
Let's talk about something that is quite exciting for Capitec, and that is your virtual mobile network. It's grown tremendously. You have sold 1.3 million virtual SIM cards, of which 1.25 million are active. You are investing in that particular venture, that particular subsidiary in the business?
Yeah, for sure. Capitec Connect is for us important. I think it's very promising. We're selling about 130, 140 SIMs per month, and that's, in 8 months we got to 1.3 million. We see there's a lot of value that we can create for our client. I think it's also important if you look at airtime that we sell through the app. We're selling about 32% of all airtime in South Africa is going through the app to Vodacom and MTN, so that's an important point. So how do we create value to the client, and how do we use that data to make certain that we optimize the value for the client?
Gerrie, the business community has been holding meetings with the likes of the ministers and President Cyril Ramaphosa, so that they are in one mind when it comes to what is needed in this country. I haven't seen you as part of those particular meetings, but how do you feel about the relationship between government and business right now in terms of making sure that you take the economic growth seriously and work together? Where are the bottlenecks in this relationship?
I think if you look at the relationship, I think it's positive what's happened in the last 2 months. We support it fully, so we're very involved in it. But I think what is important is what we need to do is to execute and be decisive. And I think that's where the partnership between business and government needs to strengthen and make certain that the decisions that needs to be done gets done, and the execution is much quicker and faster, because to correct these things you need decisive actions, and I think that's a big focus area that we're still struggling and we don't trust each other 100%, and we need to get that going.
Gerrie Fourie is the CEO at Capitec Bank. Gerrie, thank you very, very much for your time this afternoon.